He noticed the cane first. He noticed at the top how it was polished. The kind of thing you'd expect to help someone stand upright, not hurt anyone. He noticed it smelled faintly of peppermint, or maybe that's just the time of the season. Everything smelled like peppermint that time of year. Coffee, candles, and even existential dread. He remembered thinking how strange it was that he leaned on it so lightly, like he didn't really need it. The movement was quick, a twist, a pull. The cane opened. Later, they'd call it a concealed blade, a weapon disguised as support. Later, people would joke about how it looked festive, something harmless. But then, all he could think was how easily we trusted people, trusted objects that seemed steady and harmless. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime Culinary, where we talk about crimes, food, and the extremely diverse history, sometimes cursed, sometimes amazing, overlap between the two. I wonder if you're starting to guess what I want to talk about based off of the story, but since there was a concealed weapon inside the cane, I thought, candy canes this time of year, hey, where do candy canes even come from? Thus, this is what we're going to talk about today. So I mentioned, where do candy canes even come from? Before there were candy canes, there was just the plant. Sugarcane didn't start out festive. It didn't start out refined. And for most of human history, we're talking before the year 1000 CE, people didn't turn sugarcane into candy at all. They just chewed it. Sugarcane originated in Southeast Asia, likely in New Guinea, and spread slowly through India, the Middle East, and eventually Africa through trade routes. People cut the stalks, peeled them, chewed the fibers, sucked out the juice, and spit the rest away. It was sweet, yeah, but it was also direct, kind of like plant to mouth, no other steps. There were no sticks, no stripes, no shapes, just teeth and juice. And honestly, super efficient. Turns out, turning sugarcane into sugar is a ton of work, like real work. You had to crush it, boil it, skim it, boil it again, clarify it, and then crystallize it. And all of that requires fuel. Time, heat, labor, and patience, which historically people were kind of short on. So for centuries, roughly 1100 to 1500, refined sugar in Europe was rare. It wasn't dessert, it was actually medicine. Apothecaries used it to preserve herbs. That kind of slipped in. Monasteries used it for feast days, and royal courts used it to show off. Sugar didn't mean treat. Sugar meant I have global connections and disposable income. By the late medieval period, something new appeared: sugar confections. These were in the form of lozenges, candied roots, and eventually long, straight sugar sticks. Not toys, not decorations, more like status symbols. These early sugar sticks were handmade and super dangerous to make. That's because sugar was boiled in copper cauldrons over open flames. No thermometers, just vibes and experience. And I would say blisters. When it reached the right stage, the molten sugar was dumped onto stone or marble slabs and pulled by hand. Yes, pulled by hand. Pulled, folded, and stretched. Pulling trapped air inside the sugar, turning it white and opaque. It was hot enough to blister, which is why I said there were not just vibes, but also blisters. But these folks who were making them just powered through. Too slow, and the sugar hardened into glass, and too fast, and it would snap. Once pliable, it was rolled into rods that were white and straight. These weren't meant to be chewed. Your dentist would never forgive you. They were meant to be sucked, long-lasting sweetness that was portable and durable. And this is the ancestor of the candy cane. Before the hook, before the stripes, before the story. Now here's the part that rarely makes it onto ornaments. By the 1600s, Europe's sugar didn't come from small farms or local gardens. It came from plantations, Caribbean plantations, Brazilian plantations, and Atlantic islands. And those plantations were built on enslaved labor. Sugar was one of the most brutal industries in the Atlantic slave trade. Enslaved people cut cane under the sun, fed it into crushing mills, worked boiling houses so hot they killed people. Injuries were constant, and death was expected. Plantations weren't designed for long lives. They were designed for output. And refined sugar, the kind needed to make sugar sticks, requires more processing, not less. So every smooth white sugar rod represented forced migration, coerced labor, and lives worked to exhaustion. The sweetness was clean, but the system was not. Here's the shift that matters, though, and why people didn't really notice it. Once sugar is refined into sticks, it no longer looks like a plant. Once it's pulled and polished, it no longer smells like a field. And once it's shaped, it no longer carries the story of who made it possible. Sugar sticks are an abstraction. They're sweetness without context. And that's what makes it possible for us to hang them on trees, to hand them to children, to forget where they came from or what it cost. When did the sugar rods turn into sugar canes? That happened sometime in the 1700s or 1800s. People start curving warm sugar sticks into hooks by hand. I read somewhere that there's a rumor that it happened in Cologne, Germany, which is where part of my family is from and thus is very exciting to me, but this was not corroborated. The red stripes appear later still. Peppermint becomes the standard flavor because it's cooling, medicinal, and familiar. Remember, that was something that was used in apothecaries a lot, so that's something like very normal to kind of have in flavor profiles. By the early 1900s, machines take over. Candy canes become uniform, mass-produced, and harmless again. Or so we think. I picked this story with the actual cane with the dagger hidden inside, but I did find multiple other stories where actual candy canes were used, sometimes the sugar version, often the large blow-up version, both for the assailant and the defendant. So even though I said that by the early 1900s, candy became harmless again, maybe that's just how it looks. Because here's the thing about sugar. It hardens, it sharpens. It hardens, it sharpens, it hides what's inside. The candy cane feels innocent because it's designed to, because centuries of labor, violence, and refinement have polished it smooth. So when someone laughs and says, a candy cane, they're not wrong. They're just not looking closely. Thanks for listening to this week's True Crime Culinary. I hope you enjoyed the story about the origin of candy canes. I loved learning about where they even come from, some of the mixed roots of where they're from, understanding, again, where slave labor really had an impact on today's lives in ways that we don't really know about and maybe haven't heard about until now. If you have any stories that you want me to look into, feel free to email me at truecrimeculinary@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces, no nothing. Can't wait to see you next week, where we will be talking about something that appears in the air. Until then, remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. See you next week.